Thank.
साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। Om. Sai Ram, everyone. A wonderful evening. Wishing everyone a wonderful evening with Swami's infinite grace. He wills things happen when you think it's beyond you. And all that we have been listening to in the previous satsang is to just surrender and leave it to him to take it forward. Today is one such beautiful session that we are going to have, where as of last night, I thought we didn't have a speaker, but then Swami wills, miracles happen, and he gets the right person to come and talk to us in this series that's been going on. Probably this is the 82nd or 83rd week. We are not missing. And I was honestly thinking why we are going to miss one Sunday. And Satyanna came up and said that will not happen when he wills. And we have someone I have heard a brief part in a series earlier. Someone who is blessed with an amazing voice, whose mother is Mrs. Parvati Mahadevan, a legendary composer who has been a very close devotee of Bhagwan. If I'm not mistaken, from my memory, her husband flew Swami for the first time
Yes.
in the aircraft. And all I can say is from what I read, I don't think I have to read, but if I were to just add, she's multidimensional, an educationist, a counselor, a teacher, mentor, a guide, for over 45 years, popularly known to everyone as Mangala Akka, and has been working in the education sector, if you want to put it in that manner, focusing on young minds. And I think that is something so unique, for the fact that when we are able to communicate to a young mind, we inspire and we allow them to have a process of evolving in their journey of life. And that's why Swami has given us the Bal Vikas movement and so on. Beyond that, a wonderful singer who's been looking at alternative methods, incorporating music, storytelling, and dance in her teaching, who has addressed many centers around the world. And currently, she's a trustee and advisor of MGET. Where she has added value to the academic growth. But most importantly, the biggest thing that is common to all of us is she's a humble servant of Mother Sai. And that is the only thing that makes who we are. And today I'm as excited as you are to listen to Mangala Akka. And from now on, to the time that she decides, or rather he wills, we will be hearing her. And I look forward to hearing from you, Akka. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram. Thank you very much. Sai Ram Satya. You are the instrument that the Lord used to reach me yesterday, where I live in Kanchipuram. Far, far away, but close enough in the Sai family. I consider it a great honor and privilege to be addressing all of you today. I begin with a little addition to what Venkat just now introduced me as an educationist. Yes, But long before that, Swami chose me to be just his Sevadal. I love to be called that because he always looked at me, even when I was bhajan convener at Sundaram, he said, "Where is my Sevadal?" And to me, that has been the most precious title I could ever have been given by anybody and by the Lord himself. And my life's journey has repeatedly shown me that being that Sevadal, being whatever we do and whatever we offer him is in a Seva Bhavana. And that is the only way to realize ourselves and to reach him ultimately. Having said that, I wish to also say that MGET is a part of a big NGO called the Hand in Hand India, of which I am one of the trustees. And this journey has been another divine orchestration in my life, which has brought me to Kanchipuram. And as I live here and experience this Moksha Dwaram more and more each day, I realize today is another opportunity being given to me by the Lord, by Sri Satya Sai Baba or Bhagwan, to experience the bliss of being in a Moksha Dwaram, where it is eternal Nama, it is 1,000 temples, so the chants and the prayers and the divine vibrations are all around. And I shall try today to reach and share some of those experiences of divine bliss, which I have been lucky enough to experience in the direct presence of Bhagwan with all of you today. So I start with my humble pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba. My pranams to my guru, my mother, my music guru, the one who took me to Bhagwan Baba, handed me over literally and said, "Here is another child I'm handing over to you, O Lord, who you gave me as a gift," like Khalil Gibran says. None of these children who are born of us are even ours. They are gifts from God to nurture and to foster with whatever teachings the Lord has given us, and return to him to do his seva and to be the change makers in this world today. We need more of them. And as Venkat was sharing with me about his Balvikas class, I think this is the most precious gift Baba has given all of us, that we are able to stay alive, in tune with the young minds, and thereby learn a lot about what life is and what we should be doing with our own minds, by keeping them young, being with these young people. Amma, my mother, is probably the first guru I had for music. And she taught me Carnatic classical music. I grew up in that environment. My father nurtured me with temple architecture and history and mythology. My grandfather taught me Sanskrit. My grandmother taught me Tamil. And I can't think of a better home to have grown up in those early 1950s. Come 71, the war took place between Pakistan and India. My husband, being a fighter pilot, participated in that war in the Indian Air Force. I was with him with my 2 young children, and we experienced a 16 days of total abandonment by everybody whom you thought mattered in your life. We were completely secluded and cut off from everything. Those 16 days, probably, you can call it a mandala of my life at 22 years of age, taught me more about what is faith and what is having that implicit faith in a divine force. That's when Satya Sai Baba walked right royally into our lives, took over our lives, and transformed us from who we were to who we are today, and still striving to be who he wants us to be. I would like to start by saying, Satya had messaged me last night saying, we've been having a series of talks on Govind, but COVID somehow has disrupted some of it. Govind is the Gopala, the Parama Purusha, the Purna Avatara, Sai Krishna. Amma's bhajan comes to mind. Govinda, Govinda, Mukunda Madhava, Govinda Sai, Mukunda Madhava, Govinda, Gopala Sai Gopala, Gopala Sai Gopala, Mukunda Madhava Govinda Sai, Mukunda Madhava Govinda. Jai Jai Govinda, Jai Jai Gopala, 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 Govinda, Govinda, Mukunda Madhava, Govinda, Sai Mukunda Madhava, Govinda. Govinda, the very word Govinda. Govinda Nama Sankirtanam, Jai Jai Govinda is how Harikatha is done. Venkatramana Govinda, Govinda is the chant in the Tirupati Mala. Nama Smarana, that Namam, that Govinda. So when last night Satya said, Auntie, actually, since it's so last minute, you just speak whatever Swami asks you to speak. But Swami is a disciplinarian dedicated to his messages reaching us all. So since afternoon, he put me through the churning pot and he said, Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. And so what I speak this evening is what Swami wants us all to hear. I am but that Sevadal of his, lovely and wishing to be just that. I am but that instrument whom the Lord is using today to reach his message to all of you. And it is a learning and a great opportunity for me to think about something which I didn't think about till today. So look at the way we all learn. Avayar comes to mind when she said, she said, what we think we have learned is only a fistful. There is an ocean waiting out there. And that is how Swami is training all of us. I'm very, very grateful to Swami today for having given us all this opportunity. So Govinda in the Bhagavatam, apparently all of you are in the study of the Sai Bhagavatam and you are in the process of learning more about the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam itself, we know, has been the gift from Brahma to Vasishta to Shukhamuni to Parikshit Maharaj in the Mahabharata, where ultimately Janamejaya is the last of that dynasty. And we know, I think most of us know the story of Parikshit and Janamejaya and how this Bhagavatam was given to Parikshit Maharaj as the tool for his moksha, for his liberation and for his attaining actualization. So the Bhagavata is one of our greatest Puranas. It has the stories of Krishna, it has the story of the Dashavatara, and Swami Sai Bhagavata explores adventures into philosophies which I have not read anywhere else. His ways of bringing everything down to a very simple level where you and I can understand the greatest of tattvas and philosophies of the Upanishads and the Vedantas. So Swami Sai Bhagavatam, I think, is a must read for all of us. Krishna, that very word, the moment we say Krishna, there seems to be something attracting us, and that is the word, attraction. Krishna means the one who attracts. So if we explore further and see, whom does this Krishna attract? The Go. Go is also Veda. Go is also the cow. The holy cow in India is worshipped from Kamadhenu to any cow. Cow literally means the one that wanders, the one that needs herding, the one that needs to return home every evening. And if we look at this very simply, it just means Krishna, the cowherd, herded his cattle every evening and brought them home. So on this life's journey, we are all that go. We are wandering here and there in search of greener pastures sometimes lost. Like Jesus beautifully says, I have come as the good shepherd to bring my sheep home. There's a lot of similarity. Swami himself has spoken about Krishna and Christ being so similar from their birth to their lives and the sermons they have given us. So this Go Pala, the one who is the protector, the one who shepherds, and the one who takes care of that animal or the Go in us. What is Govinda then? Why another name? What is Go and what is Vinda? Vinda is the gatherer. Vrinda means Samuha, community. So the gatherer of this. So in Satya Sai Baba's fold, we meet individuals, yes, but we all are a gathered family, a community, a world community, a human race that has been united by this Krishna, Sai Krishna, the one who has attracted each of us and taken us into his fold so that we may self-actualize and merge with him. In this path of reaching the Lord, Narada would be the first one as our guru who has taught us the Bhakti Marga through Namasmarana. Namasmarana simply being chanting the name. Bhakti is devotion. Narada, we all know, is the traveling sage with his tanpura, which gives him the sound vibrations on which he travels. Narada 24/7 has Narayana on his lips. Other than that, nothing else. And he was the one who transformed the dacoit Ratnakara into sage Valmiki by giving him the Mahamantram, Rama. Narada Bhakti Vijayam has been composed by Saint Tyagaraja. It is a complete chapter of Narada's devotion to the Lord. Now, Narada is also considered music. Nadam is Narada. There's an interesting story here which Amma taught us all when she taught us Carnatic music. She said there are saptaswaras. We all know there are 7 notes in music. These saptaswaras are sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, ni. And in Western music, it is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And Chinese, every kind of music on earth will probably have the basic 7 notes. Amma used to be very curious about why it is called Shadja, Rishabha, Gandhara, and she would explain to us what that meant in Sanskrit. And after being blessed by Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba, who always called her Enna radio singer, Yeppa vandachu. That was Swami's loving way of addressing Amma. And she would always tell me, he always calls me radio singer, radio singer. When will he call me Swami singer? And I said, I don't know. That is between you and him. And one day he did, in my presence, when I was sitting with Amma at Darshan line in Vrindavan. Swami came out. He came to her and said, Enna radio singer, Inime Swami ki paadu. From now sing for Swami, O Bangaru, he said. And he called her his Bangaru, his dear golden one. And that evening, Amma was given a revelation by Swami. And the revelation is simply that these 7 notes denote the 7 chakras in our body. And in yoga, we learn that these 7 chakras are what keeps us all alive and spinning. And for each of those notes, there is a very beautiful spiritual word associated with that note, which Amma was blessed to receive, and she shared it with me. She said, Sa is for Satya. Ri, the next note, Rama Nama. Ga, Guna Sankirtanam. Sing the gunas of the Lord, the virtues of the Lord. Sing those. Ma, Mananam. Meditate upon and practice. Pa, with prema and bhakti, with love and devotion. Da, dhyana. Go deep into meditation. with this note. Ni, nididhyasana. Get into a state of complete bliss with nirmala chitta, with a pure, unblemished mind. Be able to relate with these 7 musical notes, and then you will find the Sai waiting to receive you, because his flute is made up of these. And she said, the flute is the hollowest instrument we can think of, through which the most beautiful music flows. And Krishna is the one who plays on this flute. We know the song Celestial, the Bhagavad Gita was gifted to us by him. Amma often in many of her compositions refers to this flute. Kodalu, she says in Kannada, Kural in Tamil, Kuhu Kuhu Koyaliya Bole, and she talks about this flute, which the Basuri, which is in Krishna's hand. And she once shared with me her thoughts about this, which of course are Swami's thoughts through using her as his instrument to give us. So Swami's thoughts on the flute is that we have to become as hollow as the flute for him to use us and play through us his celestial song. This sounds a little almost impossible. How do I become like a flute? How do I become hollow? That is where the introspection, the analysis, and going within, like Swami would say, interview, interview, interview. When are you going to say inner view, inner view? I'm giving you interview so that you'll ask for inner view. Like he always told us, I have come to give you whatever you ask for, so that you will get ready to receive what I have come to give you. And he has not come to give us sofa sets and cars and bungalows. Yes, that's part of his leelas. But I think he's raising us all above that level of just material pursuits to say, there is more within you which you're not even aware of. There is such a hidden potential sitting within you. All you need to do is tap it and it will just overflow. And I think as an educator, I experience this every day of my life with young children, where educare itself, Swami told us, means bringing out blossoming, where the whole world has thought of education as something we need to put in, something we need to give. He said, bring it out. And Bal Vikas does just that. Bring out whatever is inside. That blossoming of that little bud is what you have to help do. You're the sunshine, you are the water, you're the Mother Earth. And that is who a guru is. And our Satguru, Bhagwan Sri Sai Baba, has literally, as the Gayatri, as the sunshine in our lives, is helping us even today to rise above these material, basic needs of man. To say, okay, I've eaten, okay, I'm wearing a dress, okay, I've got a shelter above my head. What more? How many more of these do I need? What is it that I've come here for? What is the purpose of my life? And he says, along with all of this, you need to contemplate on that. So Krishna being that attraction and the one who attracts us, it is only behoven of us to relate with that and say, there is something I need to do now. And what is that I need to do is what I have to think about. So bhajan is one sadhana, a practice, a penance, a tool. Swami has given us various tools, very simple tools. Seva, help wherever you can, whoever you can, in whichever way you can. It is not that you have to be part of the organization only, or go and do Narayan Seva, or go and do a blind school work, or go and do organized Seva. For those of us who may not have an organization close by, or who are in places where we cannot reach out to the organization, he has said, do your seva wherever you are, in your home, within your home. Surely there is enough seva you can do. Seva meaning selfless service. So even to your immediate family members, instead of thinking it a duty, as Swami has oft told us, and I'm sure most of us are aware of that powerful teaching of his. He says, duty without devotion is deplorable. Duty with love and devotion is desirable. But love without duty is divine. And so we have to aspire for that love without duty. How do I get that love within me, Swami? That I can do it without duty boundness, that it is not because she's my child or because she's my mother-in-law I'm doing it. Can I Can I have that encompassing love that you have for every life form, for inanimate too, and feel that all of it is part of me and I'm a part of all of that. The oneness that Sundar often talks to us about, Sundar Iyer, our son-in-law, who is in a way my guru. And he talks about this Kaivalya, this oneness principle, which is really what Swami wants us to aspire for. And in that, I would say that for most of us, seva of that kind is easier to do because it's a physical form of expression of our desire to help or to serve. Bhajan is a spiritual sadhana. Along with it, it is a seva. Swami has said, bhajan is bhakti seva. What are you doing in bhajan? You're not just sitting and singing. You are doing seva because as a singer, you are leading the others with you into the path of devotion and taking their minds off the mundane into the realm of spirituality, into the realm of divinity, into the realm of the glory of the Lord, of this divine force. And so that responsibility you take on and do it selflessly because you're not doing it for A or B or C. You're singing because you have been gifted a voice, you've been trained and you can sing. And now those who can't sing, what do? We listen. And those who cannot sing, cannot hear, what do? They probably use their hands and go out and do seva. I think in Swami's organization, we have opportunity to experience every form of seva we can do to realize ourselves and to realize who we really are and the power within us to transcend. This is really a wonderful opportunity being given to us by the Lord. The 4 Ds, of course, have to go along with every seva we do. First is duty, of course. Second is the discipline, which Swami is very fond of. Devotion. Without that, even discipline is no use, because if you're just disciplined like a military person and say, this is the time I will do this and I will do that and be rigid and conditioned, then you're missing out on a whole heart factor. It becomes head factor. So Swami often talked to us and said, be like King Janaka. Head in the forest, hands in society. And that is his greatness, apparently, where he was able to detach himself from the personal issues there and do his seva. And then discrimination, like the swan, when given a bowl of milk, is able to separate the water from the milk. And that is why the swan is represented as being close to Saraswati, power of discrimination. And so all of these 4 aspects have to come into bhajan. Bhajan is but seva of jana through bhakti. In bhajan, naturally there has to be Shruti Mata, Layam Pita. Shruti is the pitch or the drone used with which you sing along so that it is beautiful to the listeners, so that it is melodious, it's harmonious with the instrumentations, and it is very appreciable to those who listen. Layam is tala, it is rhythm. Life is only rhythm. From the heartbeat to the leaf on the tree to the wind blowing, everything is rhythm. And without rhythm and without this Shruti, Shruti Mata, Layam Pita, like the mother and father, if these 2 don't exist in bhajan, the bhajan is an orphan. So it may not be very pleasing to hear. For those of us who think, well, Swami has told us often, I only look at the bhakti, I only look at the bhava, I only look at the devotion of the person who's singing. Of course he does. But that very Swami has repeatedly told us as bhajan singers, that as a lead bhajan singer, one of the duties imposed on you by me is that you learn properly, you train well, and you sing in Shruti and in Laya. And he would joke and say, you are closing your eyes and you're looking at me and you're singing Kodandarama, Kodandarama, Pattabhirama. And the person sitting in the last row, maybe the mic didn't work well that day, is hearing it and singing Dodandarama, Dodandarama. So whom do I punish? Give me punishment, give me punishment. I have to give you, no, because you're the one who's leading him. So the responsibility of a leader in a bhajan group becomes very, 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 very critical here. That is why bhajan wing and bhajan training is such an important part of the Sai organization. Now, why am I giving so much importance to this one seva, because Krishna is the one who attracts, and Sai Krishna attracts all of us with music. When Swami sings, there is nothing but bliss, and none of us in that 50,000, 80,000, the whole world sitting and listening to him can do anything other than listen, clap, and sing along with him. That is the power of music. And today we know scientifically and medically how music is being used. Therapeutically, music is being used for so much healing on this earth. So this Krishna playing the flute attracted not only the not only the cattle, but it attracted Radha. I would like to dwell a little on this Radha. I've often thought about Swami's repeated references to Radha's bhakti, Radha's devotion. We know Krishna was wedded to Rukmini and Satyabhama, and the gopis all felt that each of them had Krishna in their hearts. But Radha, why does she stand out as one of his greatest devotees, as one of his greatest bhaktas? Swami himself has said two incidents which I would like to share with you today. One I have often shared in most of my talks because it's very dear to my heart. And I think Swami keeps repeatedly making me speak it because he wants it to be heard again and again and again. And in Swami's speeches too, we see that there are sometimes references he makes to the same things he's taught us over the years, but he will keep repeating them because I think we have not yet really understood the entirety of that meaning. To me today, this Radha comes to mind. One instance is when we were there as an interview group, I think it was the Sundaram group, and Swami said, "Where is Radha?" And we thought, who is Radha in the group? There is no Radha. And very daringly, me as the convener said, "Swami, we don't have Radha in our bhajan group." Okay. And then he said, okay, what is your English for Radha? R-A-D-H-A. Okay, now I'll tell you where is Radha. He said, take that R and put it at the back, Aadhar. Make your devotion your foundation, Aadhar, that is the foundation. Then he said, take that A and put it there, it becomes Dhara. Let that flow towards your Krishna. And he said, take that DH and put it at the back, Arad. It becomes the offering. You offer yourself. You become the offering. And when you do that, you are Radha. So now you know where is Radha. Not so easy, right? All of this sounds so easy, so simple when Swami says it. But you go home, and for years now, I've been thinking about that R-A-D-H-A. And I'm wondering whether I'm at Aadhar stage, whether I'm at Dhara stage, whether I'm at Aradhana stage. And where is this Radha? Where is that devotion? Where is that attraction when Sai Krishna plays that flute to just leave everything and abandon everything and not be knowing where you are and just run to him like Meera did? She said, Tan man sudh sabuk hoye, mere to Giridhar Gopal. When he calls me, I don't know if there's family or relations or husband or children or anything, I'm just running there. Now, again, I would like to reiterate here that in another instance, I thought it was always for ladies, Radha being a stree. I took it like that. And in the bhajan groups, I used to share this and say, we must all aspire to be that Radha. We must all aspire to please Swami by somewhere at least attempting to be close to that Radha whom he's referring to. Sure enough, a few years later, my mother, Parvati Mahadevan, Amma, was going through probably one of the most turbulent times of her life. Everything that a woman holds sacred and needed, her security, her being who she is, her whole identity depended on that, being who she is and being where she is in that family, was all taken away from her, wiped clean in various ways. And in that turbulent phase, I happened to be with her quite often. Swami was her anchor, of course. Swami was her guide. Not that he spoke with her every day or that she went there even. And he spoke to his Radha, I guess. He played his flute to her and she responded. I've experienced it often with her. And one day she said, I want Swami to tell me why I have to go through this. What prarabdha karma is it? Or what karma is it now? Or what is this and where is it taking me? Everything that I considered important and everything I considered I needed has been taken away from me. So what does this mean? What does this all mean? He's not telling me. The next morning we went to Sai Vrindavan for darshan. It was a Thursday and it happened to be that Swami had just arrived. He came out and he looked at her and smiled and said, Bangaru, come inside. So she got up and he looked at me and he said, So I knew I could also go in. We were the two at that interview that day in Sai Vrindavan. Swami finished darshan and came in. He looked at Amma and he said, Enna, as if nothing had happened. He said, so what? Now what is it? She cried and she said, Swami, I'm feeling completely lost. I'm feeling completely abandoned. I'm lost. Please, Swami, help me. He smiled, sat on his chair, and he said, Bangaru, I will tell you a story. Oka chinna katha. And he started his story and he narrated. He said, once, when Krishna was in Vrindavan, he was alone, ekantam. And during that time, nobody goes in there or nobody disturbs him. It is understood. Krishna picked up his flute. And as he started playing on it, Radha could not contain herself. She ran from where she was and she just reached that gates of Vrindavan, where she encountered two hefty Dwarapalakas, doorkeepers. And they said, halt, just stop. And she said, please, let me go in. Krishna is playing the flute. You can't keep me away from him now. I have to go there. And they said, halt. Don't you see who you are? And she said, who? I'm Radha. No, you are a stree. You are a woman. And she said, so? I run to Krishna when he's playing under the trees, when he's herding the cows. I run to him, Gokulam. I run wherever he plays the flute. Why can't I go in? No. At this time, he is in Ekantam. He is alone, wishes to be alone. We are the doorkeepers and we can't let you go in. We are very sorry. And above all that, you are a woman. You're a stree. And she said, what does that mean? In her innocence, Radha asked, and this is Swami telling us, what does it mean? And one of the Dwarapalakas said, well, it means you're an abala. She said, abala? And he said, yes, abala. Now in Sanskrit, the word bala means strength. Abala means weak, without strength, sans strength. So for a man, a doorkeeper, a warrior with a weapon, looking at her, the weaker sex as we call us. So she seemed weak and she's a stree, she's a woman. Can't let her in. Going on even today. Anyway, so Radha said, oh, I am abala? Till then, I don't think Radha ever thought of herself as weak. I don't think the thought occurred to her. She didn't think of herself as strong, but she didn't think of herself as weak either. And so she said, why am I abala? And they said, because, look, you are abala, you're stree. And she said, okay, what are you then? They said, hey, look at us. Can't you see us? We are men. And she said, may I ask you a few questions, please? And they said, quick. And she said, do you feel hungry? Yes, of course we do. Do you feel sleepy? Yes. Do you feel thirst? All those questions. And at the end of it all, she said, look, you feel everything I do too. You experience everything that I experience. How are you different from me? And the Dwarapalakas were stumped. And at that point, Swami looked at Amma and he said, Bangaru, that is when I ran out to meet Radha. Both Amma and I just cried. We cried because we were in the presence of that Krishna. He said, I ran. Swami said it. And that day Amma said, all my doubts are cleared, Swami. All my doubts are cleared. You play that flute. Allow me to just immerse myself in that Gita. Let my offerings always be Gita Radhana. Today, I'm happy to share with you all starting in June this year, Swami is orchestrating every composition of Amma's in classical ragas to be taught and learnt by so many young vocalists all over. And every Thursday on Sai Charan TV, one of her compositions is being released as Geeta Aradhana, and the Lord is accepting them. It has taken many years, but that is the penance of every composer. Tyagaraja did not have a bed of roses. His Rama was thrown into the river. And then he said, Kanuguntini, I have found you, O Rama. Everyone, Mirabai was given poison to drink. Who has wanted the Lord and yearned for the Lord just had a cakewalk? It's been a rather stony path, and more often than not, they have had to face the kind of complete identity loss, at which point the soul surfaces to say, you are not this body, you are not this name, you are not this identity at all. This is only for this earthly residence. You have worn this dress. Sorry. The day that dress changes, that soul is released. And that is the one, that is the Jivatma, which merges with the Paramatma. And this philosophy, I think, came through to Amma through that one incident of Radha. So to me, Radha symbolizes each Jivatma in search and yearning for that Paramatma and mergence with that Paramatma. And so I dwelt upon it a lot, and I realized that this is how Swami wants us to view ourselves. And he says, every Jivatma on this earth is a Stree. That is the female energy, the Shakti part, which is moving, which is living, which is existing, which is doing, which is orchestrating so many mundane things. But the Paramatma is the one who's orchestrating that Jivatma's entire life story. And the song of life has to be sung to the tune of Satya and Prema. And with Shruti and Laya, when we sing it, that bhajan reaches the Lord, and it becomes in tune with his flute. And that is when we merge. That is when the mergence happens. And I don't think one has to wait for a physical death to occur. He says, die mind. Why do women want diamonds? Die mind. Every time we die to that mind, that monkey mind, conquer it and say, no, I will not let you rule me or tell me what to do. The Sai within me, that Sai Krishna, is the dictator. And he is the eternal charioteer who is riding my chariot and taking me through life. And so only what he says will be listened to. Only what he says will be acted upon. And so he becomes your inner guide. And so from an outside physical form of the Lord that we see and we relate with, we now started internalizing the Lord, which we all are doing today, because his physical presence is not seen as it used to be in that 5-foot odd form, which we've all enjoyed and reveled in that bliss. But today, Swami is as much here as he was then. I don't like to say was. Swami is here, always, eternally. Amma was blessed by Swami after this. After a few years, I recall, she kept talking about this Radha and all of that, the Abala part. And then she became very empowered by Swami to live a life of isolation. She chose it. That is the gift he gave her. Took her away from everything that seemed to matter, put her through the fire. Bangaru is gold. And once he calls you that, you have to be ready to accept the fire that goes with it, because only then it has to be beaten, it has to be put in the fire, it has to be melted, smelted, and made into the jewel which can be accepted by the Lord. And so Amma was willing to go through that fire. So without any resistance, she allowed him to chisel her. So the sculptor, the master sculptor, took over his Bangaru and chiseled her life to be one of isolation in a cottage in Whitefield. And while living there for all 35 odd years, Amma's bliss I have experienced very often. Austerity. Her life was one of sadhana, of austerity, of penance. And if I have witnessed a saint in the making, or a great soul being uplifted by the Lord, day by day and chiseled to perfection. I have actually seen it happening with Amma. One of the songs that he gifted her with is Navavida Bhakti. We all know bhajan is a form of devotion, and bhakti at its peak as nama smarana, as the chanting of the Lord's name. And we know the variety of bhajans that exist, Leela, the quality of the Lord's being extolled, beseeching him, seeking him, asking for him, his stories being narrated. All of this comes under the panorama of bhajan itself. Navavida Bhakti. If we go back in time to Shirdi Sai's avatar, we see this repeated twice in the Sai Satcharitra. He talks about a merchant who came to see him asking for Brahmagnana. And in that story, Swami relates how he tells him, go put your dhotar out, your dhoti. Put it out. There's a horse there which has just defecated. Go and bring that for me. This man is completely bemused. He says, what? I have to bring that dung, a horse dung? What? But having asked for Brahmagyana and Baba telling him, go and do that, now he has no options. So he goes, he puts his dhotar out and he picks up 9 balls of the horse dung and brings it back and puts it there in Dwarka Mai. And Baba smiles and says, that is Brahmagyana for you. The man does not understand anything. I mean, this is, none of us would understand what this is. Baba smiles and says, that's the 9 forms of bhakti I want you to develop within yourself, to even seek Brahmagyana. You've come and you think you can sit here and order me and say, give me Brahmagyana and I'll give it to you. I'm trying to give it to you, but you're not understanding. I sent a young boy to buy oil for the lamp. 4 times he came back saying, the oil vendor says he cannot give you oil till you settle his last bill. I'm looking for 5 rupees. You have 10 times that 5 rupees in your pocket, but you're not taking it out and giving it to me. And you want Brahmagyana? I'm trying to give it to you. So in simple ways, Baba, as Shirdi Baba taught us, that give up everything that you think is important or you need, especially when the Guru asks for it, the Guru Dakshina, right? And our Satya Sai Baba gave it all free on a platter to us all, saying, Laddu, here, take and just eat and enjoy. He's just gifted us and given us and given us and given us. So what do we do with it? So that Navavida Bhakti, Amma used to often relate to and say that Navavida Bhakti, that Navavida Bhakti. Then we all know of Lakshmi Bai Shinde, who was the one who took care of Baba till his Samadhi. And she had given him money once to help for the marriage of a poor girl whose father came seeking Swami's blessings, Shirdi Baba's blessings. And Shirdi Baba fell short of 9 coins, which she gave as a rich widow. She had that. She said, whatever is mine is yours, Baba. And he said, no, I will give it back to you. Baba attained Samadhi. And we know that he has come back as Satya Sai Baba. And when Peddabottu Amma, whom we have had the honor and privilege to do Pada Namaskaram to, was at Parthi. When she came, Baba looked at her and said, Lakshmi Bai gave her Shirdi Sai Darshan and gave her 9 coins. And she didn't know what it was. And then it all came back to her that as Lakshmi Bai, she had given those 9 coins to Swami to give for a poor girl's wedding. He had given it back to her in this avatar to also reassure her that he is the Shirdi Sai and that he has given her the Navavida Bhakti. So these 9 coins are there in Shirdi in her family house. And Navavida Bhakti is something Amma dwelt upon a lot. So she has been blessed by Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba to compose in 9 ragas this Navavida Bhakti. I'm going to dwell a little on this Navavida Bhakti now because it takes you in direct relationship with the Sai Bhagavatam. That is where I'm coming from. Because when Satya told me last night that we are all studying the Sai Bhagavatam and we do discourse about it and we do dwell on it, and Govinda is the title given to this. That is how this whole thought process began. And then Swami has taken over. Right now, it's he who's just helping us learn. So through the bhajan, we achieve a state of being the flute in his hands. That is what we experience. So what is the first form of this 9 forms of bhakti? Shravanam. Sundar often uses this word in his satsangs. Shravanam. While teaching yoga also. Shravana literally means hearing, listening. Now, there's a difference between hearing and listening. We must be very clear. As a teacher trainer, I often use it with teachers who have such a difficult time in the classroom getting the attention of students. They keep saying, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. But the children are not listening. They are hearing her, but they are not listening. So what is the difference? Hearing is the activity of the organ of the ear, oral. Listening comes after that. When you hear a sound, it's just an impact being made of the sound vibration on the eardrum, and so that impresses a neuron in your brain. Does it stay for long? No. The minute the thunder goes away, I forget about the thunder. Or the minute a door bangs, I'm upset for a minute or so, and then it goes away. What happens when I listen? Listening is not only about the ear. It is to take in what is being said through the ear, through sound vibrations, dwell upon it, understand it, contemplate, assimilate, store it somewhere as a software where you can keep tapping it when you need it. So for students, especially, all of us are students of life, all of us are Swami students. I hope we always remain learners and students to the master teacher, the guru. So when he teaches us, we listen and it goes away. We go back to our same old hemispheres, and then we say, but you know what? I went and attended the discourse, I went and listened, I did all of that, but nothing has changed in my life. Naturally not, because you only heard, you didn't listen. When you listen, you also become obedient, you also become a disciple, you also become humble, you also accept what the teacher is trying to tell you and understand it, assimilate it, and practice it. So Shravanam is the first form of bhakti. Unless we are devoted to our teacher, unless we have faith in that teacher, unless we believe in that teacher, we are never going to listen. We are going to hear, and it's going to remain at that level. Yes, I heard what Swami said. Yeah. And then I go back to everything. I listened to what Swami said. Means you're doing it already. And like Swami says, don't say, I will try. Say, I will do. There is no trying. I will do. So now Parikshit is an example. Parikshit Maharaja can be an example of the one who listened. Because when he was given that curse, that he will die in 7 days from the serpent's bite, he went off onto a boat and sat in the oceans and said, nothing can harm me. And his son was busy talking to Nagaraja saying, you can't go there. But what happened, happened. But Parikshit was lucky because of the saint's father telling him, Shringi's father tells him, you cannot curse somebody that he will have a death like this. You know, there must be some way out of that. And Shringi agrees and says, okay, if he hears the Bhagavatam till he dies, it will give him moksham. And that is how Parikshit gets Shukamuni to come. And the Bhagavatam is narrated to King Parikshit for 7 days. Now, Parikshit did not just hear the Bhagavatam, he listened. He listened to the Bhagavatam, and so he got moksha, moha kshaya. He got his eternal bliss and merged with the Lord. So that kind of listening is what is required for us. Next, we'll come to Kirtanam. Kirtanam is what? It is not song. Kirtanam is singing. Kirtan karo, bhajan karo. Come on, sing means Kirtanam. Kirtanam is also the title or name given to a song. It's called a Kirtanam because it has certain specific attributes to it, which separate it from a poem or a poetry. It's not just lyrics. It has got melody, it has got tune, it has got harmony, it has got talam, it's got beat, it's got everything. So it's a Kirtanam. Now, what is this bhakti in this Kirtanam? There are various kinds of Kirtanams. There is chanting. Om Gananam Tva Ganapati Gum Havamahe. Kirtanam. You're calling out to Ganesha. You're chanting his name. You're calling about his attribute. You're talking about his attributes. And you're saying, come and bless us. So that is Kirtanam. Singing. Govinda, Govinda. It's got melody, it's got tune, it's got talam, it's got layam, it's got words, it's got meaning. That is singing Kirtanam. Samaveda is the origin of our music. Here I would like to deviate a little maybe, but it will be interesting for you to know that Ravana, the great Shiva Bhakta, known for his prowess and his ego and his valor and his negativity, also had the side of nobody is entirely bad, nobody is entirely good, right? So Ravana was actually a very, very devout Shiva Bhakta, and according to Puranas, Ravana's bhakti is praised a lot. And he's the one who composed the Shiva Tandava Stotram. So Ravana was a musician, he played the veena. And his wife Mandodari too played the veena. He was a great king too. So Ravana, while wanting a boon from Shiva, reached Kailasa to be told by Parvati Devi that he is in deep contemplation, meditation, silence, maunam. He is like Dakshinamurti now. I'm very sorry, he can't be disturbed. Ravana was not one to take a no from anybody. So he sat there and he eventually decided he will move Mount Kailas on his 10 heads so that he will shake Shiva out of his trance. Nothing moved Shiva. He got tired and gave up. And he sat and he did mananam. He did meditation. And he got the revelation that he could move Shiva only through music, nada, sound. So with his nail, he was a Rakshasa, a demon, so he had long nails. He's supposed to have slit his stomach from the duodenum to the navel. Pulled out, it sounds morbid, pulled out 7 nerves that exist there, the Sapta Nadis, and he played twang on each of them, the 7 notes. This is the origin then of music. Sapta Nadi emanates the sound. How can I believe this? How do I believe this? Saint Tyagaraja is a great composer, one of the trinity of classical Carnatic music, worshipped all over. Tiruvayaru, we have an Aradhana festival for him. This saint has sung a song, Shobillu Saptaswara. Shobillu Saptaswara. It describes the 7 notes. And in that he says, how do you sing the Shobi? How do you sing the Saptaswara that it becomes Shobhanam, that it becomes pleasing to the Lord or to anyone who listens to your song? How does it become beautiful? Shobha. How does it become really adorned and beautiful and perfect? How does it become perfect? The Saptaswara. He says, this is the way you have to sing it. He's revealed this, right? Nabhi kantarasana. Nabhi, navel, hrid, heart, kantha, throat, rasana, between the nose and that inner tongue. If the sound emanates in this manner, Omkaram, which Swami has taught us all, if the sound emanates like this, origin in that navel where the Saptanadis are, and emanating through the nose and this voice, that becomes Shobillu Saptaswara. That Saptaswaras are the most melodious and beautiful and accepted by the Lord. So I know for sure now that Ravana has discovered the secret of where those 7 notes emanate from. The Samaveda, we all know, is the origin of our music. All our chants are based on these notes. So the Saptaswara is the Samaveda, and this is the origin of our music. So Kirtanam is a form of bhakti which pleases the Lord. Next comes Vishnu Smaranam. Of course, though that Saptaswara, Sarigama Padani, if I keep singing, it's beautiful, yes, but now I have to put in words, I have to put in meaning, I have to put in things which adorn the Lord. Just as gold cannot be just put as gold, we have to make it into a jewel. We have to transform it into something beautiful, which the Lord will accept and adorn himself with. And so the Vishnu Smaranam, thinking of the Lord always. Smarana is thinking, meditating upon, always in that contemplation. Vishnu Smaranam should be eternal and constant remembrance. For this too, we have bhajan as the main means of doing Vishnu Smaranam, because constantly and all the time you can be humming a bhajan which comes to mind, and it could be the Narayana bhajan or Shiva bhajan or Devi bhajan or Hanuman bhajan or Sarvadharma bhajan, whatever bhajan, it will have the name of the Lord in it. And so it becomes a constant remembrance. And one of the beautiful things about bhajan is Swami says, while you're cooking, why don't you sing? While you're bathing, why don't you sing? I haven't told you that you must only sit for bhajan at 6 o'clock and only then is bhajan to happen. It is a constant remembrance of the Lord's name. That's one beautiful way for bhajan trainees to practice their bhajans, because we really, all of us are caught up in a lot of things, and we find that we have to set aside time for practice. So Swami has given us the easy way to practice all the time, so that your house vibrates with the sound and it becomes a temple, a walking, moving temple of the Lord, where he is everywhere and he pervades the entire environment. And so it becomes a beautiful place for you to live in, and everything positive happens there. And everyone in the home benefits because of your bhajan practice. So do that. So now, next comes Pada Sevanam, worshipping the feet of the Lord. This could be in the form of just keeping his padukas and worshipping them. It could also be simply doing mental images of that padam. In Pada Sevanam, I came across in Amma's song this beautiful reference she makes to Papa Vinashanam. She says, all sins, all wrongdoings, intended or otherwise, that we have done will vanish the moment that padam touches us, or we are able to touch that padam. Ahalya, what moksha did she get with a simple touch of Rama's toe? What happened to Bali Chakravarti when Vamana put his foot on his head? What happened to Bharata when Rama gave him those padukas? What happened to Kalinga when Krishna danced the Nartanam on his head with those tiny little kunju feet? So those feet of the Lord, and many of us have had the bliss of having touched Sri Satya Sai Baba Bhagwan's padam. And I have had the experience of having one namaskaram given, probably two in all my 50 odd years of being with Swami. And I have no regrets or yearning that I didn't get more, simply because he made it so simply beautiful for me to understand. Gave me a pada namaskaram and said, digest this one. That has stayed with me. Digest this one. What does it mean, Swami? Even to touch those feet once in your lifetime, do you know how much tapas or punyam you must have done in your previous births, or through the blessings of your elders, or through whatever good satkarmas you've done? Even to touch that once, if it can redeem you for 7 generations, he has said, one of a family coming to me, 7 generations I will take care of. That assurance Swami has given us. Abhaya hastam kurtu, wife here when I am here. He has given us this. So this is the Pada Sevanam Amma talks about. Then she talks about Archanam. Archana is something all of us very easily do. Almost in our Nitya Puja, in our daily pujas, when we go to a temple, we offer. What do we offer? We offer flowers. We offer garlands. Swami used to accept garlands galore in Prashanti Nilayam. I remember the time when all of us used to vie with each other to buy the best roses, the best jasmines, the best kind of garlands made, so that when we sat in darshan line, we could attract him and he would come and take garland, and he would either fling it to somebody else far away there or give it back to you or whatever. This was the way we were all thinking that Swami's blessings are reaching us. One fine day, he just stopped all that and said, what are you doing? Are you growing those plants? Can you make a bud blossom? He asked. Can you make a tiny bud blossom? It's possible for you to do that? Those flower sellers are benefiting. Let them. Good. But what is happening to you as devotees? You are now competing with each other to say whose garland looks better, bigger, brighter, better flowers, more expensive. Is this why you've come here? And what happens to those flowers after a few hours? They fade and they disappear. Even if I give it back to you as a blessing, what do you do with it? What has transpired between you and me that flower offering became so important? What have you learned from this? It got us all thinking. And he stopped those garlands and flowers being given. One odd rose, even when we used to give, he used to just take it and just fling it away like that. Swami is a tough taskmaster, but a great Maha teacher, instant teaching like that. And so, what does he want us to offer then? Oh, Swami, but we want to offer you something, Swami, when we come, something we want to bring for you, please. Okay. Give me the Omkar Mantra Pushpam. Offer me that. Every morning, offer me your Omkaram as a Mantra Pushpam. Give it to me. Offer it to me. I will definitely accept it. It will never fade. It will remain ever fresh. It will come back to you fresh. It will give you all the blessings that you seek and need. Then he said, Sai Nama Archanam. Can you do that? Can you just keep doing Sai Nama Archanam? Sai Ram, Om Shri Sai Ram, Om Shri Sai Ram. That is enough. You don't have to put a petal there. You don't have to put kumkum there. You don't have to do anything. Just bliss out on Sai Ramam. That itself is the most beautiful, fragrant flower. Then he said, Deepa, Dupa, Karpura Aradhanam. Very good. Do that. When you light the lamp, tell yourself, this is illuminating me. When you do the Dhupam, say, I'm removing all negativity from the environment. When you do the Karpura Aradhana, which is the final, remember you have to become like that Karpuram, like that camphor, burns itself out, giving fragrance and light and no residue left. Can your life be like that? So think of this when you're doing all of this. Today, all over the world, we realize that with most homes having smoke alarms and all of this, we are not able to light camphor, we are not able to light lamps, even we are not able to light agarbatti. So what happened? Does our devotion become less? Does is Swami pleased less because we haven't done all of this? And with COVID, we're all socially distanced. It's made sure that we're all in isolated little island pockets where whatever we did earlier is not going to be done now. So then what do we do? Where is the learning? Here it comes. Next is Vandanam. What is Vandanam? It is bowing down and worshipping. Accepting that I am nothing. I am dust. I am being humble. I am nothing, you are everything. That is Vandanam. Who had that kind of Vandanam? Only Hanuman. Reference to Hanuman is being made here as the only one whose Vandanam was accepted by Lord Rama as being devoid of self. So we do Vandanam with hands, we do Vandanam with our head, we do Vandanam with our whole body, Sashtanga Namaskaram, and offering at the lotus feet. So Swami says, while you're doing that Namaskaram, I mean, Swami says means in Amma's song, right? He has sung through her. So in the song, he says, Vandanam means it should be, I offer you all the three gunas. Take them. Here is the offering. Rajas, Tamas, Sattva, all offered to you. It is all yours. Do as you will with it. Make me an instrument. The one who treats all religions as united, as oneness. I offer my Vandanam to that one, to that oneness. So when Archanam and Vandanam combine, Atma Prakashanam, she says, then your soul is illumined to reveal itself to you, saying, hey, Mangla, this is not about you, or this is not you at all. Your soul, your Atma is reaching out to that Paramatma in Vandanam. Dasyam. The seventh form of bhakti is Dasyam, Hanuman. What a Dasa. What a Sevadal. Why does he have such a big statue at Prashantinilem? Why not? To remind us all that being as mighty as he was, that he could touch from earth to sky if he wanted, that golden physique of that Vanara became so tiny, Sukshma Rupam. And as Sundar extols in his Hanuman Yajna of 101 days, he talks about that Sukshma Rupa and says how he achieved everything that Rama wanted him to do. So it doesn't really matter what kind of body we have come with, or what kind of strength we have, or whether we are an Abala, or whether we are a Purusha, or whether we are Stri, or whether we are chained. None of this matters. In Dasya Bhava, all we need to do is to say, I am doing my Lord's bidding. My teacher's instructions I'm following. That's it. Simple as that. Nothing will take me away from this path. I am his dasa. I will do as he asks me to. Unquestioning faith, like Shri Baba says, Shraddha and Saburi, the patience. I will wait till the Lord acknowledges my dasyam, and I will continue to serve. I will serve without myself being part of that service. I did it. I did this for you. You didn't return it, or I gave you this. I fed you. None of that. There is no I. So in Dasya, it is selfless service. Eighth one is Sakhyam. That is friendship with the Lord. Very difficult. That is why it comes eighth in the Bhakti order. All the others seem to be much easier. Shravanam, listen, easy. Kirtanam, sing, easy. Archanam, do puja, easy. Even Dasyam seems to be easier than the Sakhyam. Sakya Bhava, two people had, I think, in the Bhagavatam. One would come through as Sudama, the childhood friend of Krishna, who, when he ran out of everything that materially could have given him anything in life and was at the last point of saying, this is it. And his wife gives him one handful of beaten rice and says, go meet that friend of yours who's become the king of Dwaraka now. Surely he can give you a small little hut, a little better than this one, and something for us to eat and live. Go and ask him for friendship's sake. And Sudama does go there. And while with Krishna, he forgets everything because he is in bliss in the presence of Krishna. He's forgotten about hunger, about wife, about children, about everybody. Only the friendship with the Lord. And the Lord remembers it too and treats him as such and puts him on a throne and washes his feet. That is friendship supreme. And then when Sudama comes home, he suddenly on the way realizes, I forgot to ask him. I never asked him for what I was sent there to do. How am I going to face my wife now? What am I going to go back to? And when he reaches home, he sees that golden gift that the Lord has already prepared and given him long before he even thought of it or brought it to his mouth to ask. So don't ask for anything. He knows what to give you when you need it, and what he gives you will be the right thing at that time. This is Sakyam of Sudama. What about Arjuna? Greatest warrior in the Mahabharata. Bhagavatam talks about Arjuna, I think in pages. Swami himself would often refer to Arjuna. Sundar refers to Arjuna many a time. When he talks about Zen, he's the bow and arrow, he's talking about Arjuna. He talks about Arjuna a lot about this. Why did the Lord choose to give the Bhagavad Gita to a warrior? He didn't give it to the sages who were all there in front of him. He gave it to this warrior. And he said, come on, pick up that bow and arrow and come on, action, come on, do what I'm asking you to do. Okay? So, karmanye vadikaraste, nishkama karma. Don't look for the results of your actions. Leave it to me. Surrender. Sharanagati. And Arjuna proved it. Sharanagati. Whatever you say, I shall do. And so what did Swami tell him then as Krishna? He said, I am your eternal charioteer. When I am at the head of that chariot, why are you afraid to perform? Come on, put me in front of you and I will go. I would like to share a story that just came to my mind. We've all heard of Professor Gokak, who was the first vice chancellor of the Satya Sai University. He happened to be my vice chancellor when I was in college in Bangalore. Shri Gokak and Shri Narasimhan, the editor of Sanatana Sarathi, were both chosen by Swami to visit Rome for the conference at Rome of all religions. Mr. Craxi, an Italian multimillionaire who was a great devotee of Baba, had arranged this conference in Rome, and Swami had kindly agreed to send Gokak and Narasimhan. Now, Gokak and Narasimhan were on the flight, and halfway through, Gokak wanted to read his papers, which he had prepared for the talk he was going to give at that conference in Rome, and suddenly realized he had left his reading specs behind at Prasanthi Nilayam. And without that, he was pretty much blind. He said, Narasimhan, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's a Saturday. We're landing in Rome on a Sunday. Monday is the conference. I don't think any shop will be open, and mine are reading glasses, prescription glasses. I don't think anybody there will, even Kraxi will not be able to move Rome to get me my specs. What am I going to do? I have not memorized my talk and it's too long and I need that paper in front of me. What am I going to do? And Narasimhan just looked at him and said, let's pray to Bhagwan. Let us pray to Bhagwan. What else can you do in such a situation? Let's pray to Bhagwan. So they both calm. What to do? They got off the flight. They reached their hotel. They sat in the balcony. Mr. Kraxi, of course, received them. And when Gokak mentioned to him that, is it possible by some chance to get somebody? He said, well, you know what? I'll try. But like you rightly have understood, it's a Sunday and everything is closed. But yes, I can get shops open for you. But then it's a prescription glass. You don't have the prescription with you. How are we going to make this reading glasses for you? So Gokak said, keep trying something. And then they were sitting Sunday evening on the balcony of their hotel room. So Narasimhan and Professor Gokak. And they were reaching out to Swami saying, Prana Sakha Bhagavan, O friend, O Satya Sai Baba, who sent us with blessings as we left Prashanti Nilayam, saying, I am your chariot going with you. I will be with you. I am your friend. Please help us. And both of them closed their eyes. And suddenly there was a sound which disturbed them. They opened their eyes to see a pair of specs fall on the table in front of them. It was Professor Gokak's reading glasses. And Professor Gokak himself shared the story with us. So it is true. Prana Sakha Bhagavan, the friend who's always ready to help you. Just have to call out to him and he comes rushing to help you, provided you're worthy of that friendship. Now, Arjuna, among all the 5 brothers, it was Arjuna who became the Sakha, the friend. Partha became the Sakha for Krishna. Why wasn't it Yudhishthira? Why wasn't it Bhima? Why wasn't it anybody else? Why only Arjuna? So that is my question. I asked myself that. What kind of Arjuna should I become to be worthy of being Swami's friend? Whom Swami will acknowledge and accept as a friend and say, I am your charioteer. I am with you. Come on, go. Go with faith into this world. Do the actions that you have to. Do your karma. Do it knowingly. Do it willingly. Do it with devotion. And know that I am the doer and not you. The arrow that you are holding in your hand, it is your hand, yes. But the one that is going to direct that arrow is me. So he is the doer. We are all but instruments in his hands, using us for his ultimate story to unfold, his Leela to unfold. Last but not least is Atma Nivedanam, soul surrender. My Atma, I've realized now as Radha, I've realized that I'm not that body. I am that Atma. I am the soul principle. I am a spark of you. And I have the opportunity in this Janma as a human to raise myself from thinking I'm only this to becoming that. And Swami has said repeatedly, when you say I'm human, you are only half human. Why aren't you saying I am divine? I am divine. I'm not different from God. Sundar's favorite quote of Swami. So this God realization, when is it going to come to you? Will you wait till that last breath of yours is coming? And then also you may not remember me. We all heard the stories, many of them, of Swami saying how people thought, when I'm dying, I'll definitely think of Govinda. And it didn't happen. He was thinking of his factory or his family or his money. And he died. So Swami says, even to think about the Lord, you don't have to wait. So that is why Balvikas start when they are young, so that it becomes a part of the breathing, it's parts of your living, part of you. And whatever and whoever you are is only that. And then there is a hope that when that last breath leaves you, Anup Jalota in front of Swami sang this beautiful piece. Itna tu karna Swami, jab pran tan se nikle. Do this for me, O Lord. When the last breath leaves my body, please show me your revelation as that Radha Krishna, as Govinda. Govind naam leke, tab pran tan se nikle. When my breath has to leave my body, let that last sound in me be Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. Let me merge in that Govinda. And this is the prayer of Tulsidas. This is the prayer of Surdas. This is the prayer of the realized souls. That unless I practice, and unless I practice every day and from now, in everything I do, unless I practice that there is only the Lord and there is only that, I am but that little spark aspiring to merge with that divine effulgence. Unless that realization comes within me and I live it every day, I am just going to waste this Janma also and probably come back as I don't know what, to relive again and to be able to realize who I am. So this is the Navavida Bhakti Amma talks about. Smaranam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Parasukhadayakam Smaranam Kirtanam. It's a beautiful Navaraga Malika, which we will be releasing very shortly on Sai Charan TV. I invite all of you to enjoy that bliss. Navavida Bhakti is a marga, it's a path. We can choose any one of these paths. All paths lead to him. Professor Gokak said in the Rome conference, in his opening dialogue after praying to Baba, he said, once upon a time, all roads led to Rome. Today, all roads lead to Puttaparthi, to Prashanti Nilayam. Let us all thank the Lord for giving us this opportunity to be together in this satsang. Spend this time singing his glory, reminiscing his stories, thinking about all the teachings that he has so freely and so happily and with such love given us, gifted us, so that we may raise ourselves, so that we may uplift ourselves with his help as the inner guide, as the Sanatana Sarathi, as the charioteer driving this chariot, always with us, assuring us always of his presence and telling us, I am with you. Why fear when I am here? I will end with a tiny incident in Amma's life, which I have shared before, which many of you may know about, but I feel this is how Swami wants me to end this satsang, with the awareness that he is within call as your best, closest, and dearest friend. Amma in her house in Whitefield alone, one night was attacked by a dacoit. He reached out to her and pushed her against a wall. And as she was all alone, and he said, you are alone. Old lady, you are alone. I know you are alone. She screamed out. She didn't scream out to family. She didn't scream out to neighbors. She didn't call out to the police or to anybody. All she said was, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Swami. My Swami is here. My Baba is here. He's here. Look, look, he's there. And she kept pointing to her Swami room. Suddenly, I don't know what happened, but the dacoit looked there. And Swami gave him a darshan. We will never know what it was. A time for transformation had come. He dropped his knife, dagger, he dropped her chain, and he vanished out of that gate, jumping the wall. And Amma later shared with me, you know, he used me as that instrument to transform that dacoit Ratnakara, probably into another Valmiki, I don't know. But the time had come for transformation, and that dacoit had to come to do this to me. It is Swami's Leela, I realize now. And he knew that I had the strength of this within me to say, Sai Ram and Sai is with me. He also wanted to reaffirm my faith and reassure me that he is always with me and not in Prashanti Nilayam or in Vrindavan. He is there manifest where you call him. You just have to call out to him and say, Sai, Sai Ram, Sai Krishna, Sai Allah, Sai Buddha, Sai Yeshu. Call him by which name you want. Call him by whatever name you want. Sai Mata. And he will come to your rescue, provided you have surrendered and done Atma Nivedana and accepted him as the doer and you as the one who only carries out his instructions. I think this is what Amma learned through that probably very frightening experience. But to me, next morning when I reached there, she didn't look very frightened. She looked even more stronger in her spiritual strength, and outpoured Karuna Sindho Shiva Shambho Kamala Nayana Sai Shiva Shambho Kali Yuga Deva Dinabandho Kalimala Bhanjana Sai Shambho Kalimala Bhanjana Sai Shambho Shambho Shiva Shambho Shambho Shiva Shambho Shambho Shiva Shambho Govinda 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 Sai Govinda. And she ends on the note of, in this Kali Yuga, in this Kali Mala, the wrapped as we are in Kali Kala, with all the negativity around us, if we want redemption and if we want the Lord to hear us, then we cannot just call out at that time when you are in need or when you are in danger. Practice calling him through Namasmarana, through Bhajana. And she sings in Kannada, Summane irabade manave karmada bade ಕಳೆಯುವವರೆಗೆ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಇರಬಾರದೆ. Oh mind, why don't you just be quiet? Still yourself till this karma, till you understand why you have been born and for what purpose. Just be quiet, oh mind. She quietens the mind, and she sings in the last charana, karmadinda kali kalmasha kudi. Because of karma, because of actions that we have performed knowingly, kalmasha kudi, in this Kali Yuga, we have attracted a lot of negative forces too. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Call out now, because you're trapped and you want freedom from this Kali Kalmasha, from Kali. So when you want that freedom, you're calling out to him. Krishna, Krishna, yena karidare baruvane, will he come? If you call at that time saying, Krishna, 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 come and save me, will he come? When Draupadi called out to her Krishna, when the Vastrahira Chira was being done, and she said, Dwarakavasi, Mathuravasi, Brindavanavasi, why aren't you coming? It took a while, and it kept on and on and on. And then she said, Hridaya Nivasi, and he manifested. And after all that was over, she asked him, Draupadi, you promised me as a brother, when I tied that little string around your injured finger, you promised me that I will give you yards of cloth for this in return. Why did it take you so long to come, O Krishna? What kept you waiting? And he said, you called me as Dwarakavasi, as Mathuravasi, as Brindavanavasi. You thought I'm in all those places and I have to come from there. It takes a while, right? When you were with your arms open like this, your arms closed like this, you were calling out Dwarakavasi, Mathuravasi, because you were ashamed, because you did not want to reveal yourself, your true yourself. You were hiding behind your identity of who you are or who you think you are. You are Draupadi, this woman being tortured by these people. And you had your arms like this. How could I come? You released and surrendered and said, Hridaya Nivasi, and I manifested. It's a simple enough story, but a profound one for all of us to realize. The Lord is with us. Sai Krishna is here. Sai Govinda is here. And he is here for our calling. All we have to do is reach out to him through the seva that we do with bhakti. Navavida Bhakti. Choose whichever path suits you. Choose one and start today. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't let time go by, because it waits for nobody. And every moment given to us is precious, because Swami has taught us that through his life. His life is his message. And he has told us at the end that you are all my message. Let us be that. Jai Shri Sai Ram. Thank you all very much for this opportunity, allowing me to share some of the thoughts which Sai has shared through me. Jai Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, Amma. Thank you so very much. As I say every week, there's something that comes in the satsang that is close to you. And the last point that you shared was something that I experienced a few days ago here during a walk, and I actually recorded it just for me to feel convinced that that really happens. I do not know how Swami manifests that thought, whatever you think in a week, that comes in the satsang in some version or the other. And I'm of a firm conviction that every week, like his glance where he can look at one direction and he's actually looking at many, we get our customized messages packaged in its own manner that connects to our heart. And I think that is where that inspiration comes to act now. And this act now, you'll be surprised, has been coming probably for the last 5 satsangs in a row. Don't wait for tomorrow, do it today. That seems to be a very pertinent point that seems to be coming. So there are a few common threads that come from different souls in a different manner, but the message of the Lord remains the same, which is not to wait for tomorrow, to wait for a better opportunity, but to seize the moment as it comes. So in total gratitude and total Sharanagati for making this happen today, and for you to spend your time with us, sharing those wonderful lessons and messages of the Lord. And I hope we will get an opportunity to have yet another musical satsang, and we get to hear more as well. And thank you so very much. And thanks to Satyana for making this happen in his own unique way in the last moment. Sai Ram, we shall finish off with Samasta Lokas. And as always, I have no idea who the speaker for next week is, but he knows when that happens, you will get to know. Jai Sai Ram.
Jai Sai Ram.
Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jai Bolo Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba Ji ki Jai. Sai Ram, everyone, stay safe, and looking forward to seeing you all same time next week. Jai Sai Ram. You have